The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Arctic Fantasy. The brand new offer for new customers. Play just $5 and $100 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gam Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. It is currently Thursday afternoon, October 2nd, around 6:20 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso Sky Rochelle once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the second round of Shanghai. We're going to break down most or some of the matches taking place over the next day or two. So we're going to have a lot of matches to get through. So looking forward to it. Before we get into the actual recap of the first round and the preview of the second round, a brief reminder to support the show. Like and subscribing on YouTube, reminding those of you rating and review on Spotify or Apple. So podcasts you can find either on YouTube, on even the SGPN Twitter account, or find it on audio format only on Spotify or Apple. And when you do so, leave a rating and review or like subscribe on YouTube. Plus a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great merch there. We have some sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, all Tennis Game Podcast related. Check it out. Plus we have a nice discount going on, we did have a discount going on. But make sure you can check out the a merch store at different points of the year. We have a bunch of promos running, so you can get a discount at some point in the future. Plus, a reminder, download the app. We have a lot of great podcasts on the network, and you can find all of them in one easy location by going to the SGPN app in the App Store. Free to download to get access to all of our free picks and podcasts. Starting off with the recap of what happened in the first round. Overall, not good for the lock and dog. Ended up having two losses. For the lock, we had Zhang moneyline at minus 140 as he took on Baez. Won the first set, then he fell apart, so not really fun. But either way, Zhang, we know, has been, I'd say, injured recently. We saw him play a couple matches. We know Baez is really not good on hard court at all. And Zhang was up a set, looked like he was going to coast early on, and then he fell apart. Big of a loss there for the lock. For the dog, not even close. So we had Shevchenko moneyline at plus 124, took on Nishioka. Nishioka had been awful for about 3-4 months straight, and he killed Shevchenko. Wasn't even close. Shevchenko no-showed the entire match, which was kind of shocking. But either way, picked up a loss there for the dog. So not a good episode. We'll try to bounce back here on Thursday. But on the bright side, we did end up winning a future. We ended up having Sinner to win in Beijing, minus 148. Still juicy, but nonetheless a win as he was able to beat TN in straight sets. Bloodbath, a 6-2, 6-2. So sweat-free winner there for Sinner in the final. He was minus 3,500. So not a surprise to anybody, but he still won 6-2, 6-2. Nice outright win for us. We won both outrights in Tokyo and in Beijing by picking Sinner and Alcaraz, which is pure chalk. Good enough, win nonetheless. We'll try to win another outright here in Shanghai over the next week or so. So getting into the first round recap. Overall, decent amount of, I'd say, balance between drama and straightforward tennis. Starting off with the matches that took place on Wednesday. You saw Bellucci beat Walton. Goffin beat Moore in 3. Munar beat Fuchsovics in 3 as well. Ended up seeing Thompson beat Holmgren in 3 sets. Altmaier beat Schoolcat. Manarino beat Berrettini. I believe Berrettini only won 8 return points in the entire match, which is just insane to think about. But either way, it was ugly. It was 9. Berrettini in 2 sets against Manarino, not a great serve in general, won 9 return points in the entire match. Embarrassing. But either way, Manarino did win in straight sets. Cilic won, beating Basilashvili in straight sets. Nishioka beat Shevchenko in a bloodbath. You saw Vacherat, who went to qualifying, ended up beating Desir in straight sets. Korda, still being a clown, lost to Bergs in straight sets. Zhang lost to Baez in 3. You saw Sonego win the first set against Hoffman, then ended up losing in 3. And Morozin survived the marathon against Wawrinka. Good effort by Wawrinka, still past his prime, and ran out of gas there, but you saw Morozin end up beating him in 3. Either way, though, point is looking at the actual comment section, by the way, before I get into the Thursday matches. Looking over at the comment section, I see Adrian stopping by. I see Enigma stopping by as well. I see Willie mentioning the line movement in the Otmane match. He was minus 500 all day, then it plummeted. And then, of course, he ended up getting sick and had to quit midway through the first set. Yeah, it felt like somebody knew something. The fact is, Otmane, even though he ended up retiring in the middle of the first set, everyone got their action voided. So it wasn't like it really impacted anybody. But it was pretty weird that the line did drop by a full $1 right around the time of the actual match starting. So somebody knew something. It was inside information, but either way, it didn't matter because all of the plays voided for this one. See some comments. I see Enigma asking about the TN match and TN being a dog. I'll get into that in a second. Same thing with Cerundolo being a dog to Manarino. I'll mention my thoughts on those matches in a second. But Willie, I did notice that with the line movement for the Opme match, but point is, it didn't matter because he ended up having to retire, and everyone had their action voided. So moving back into the matches we ended up seeing on Thursday, Borges beat Dzanchop in 2 tiebreaks. You saw Ottman retire in the middle of that first set, as Carabelli is now going to get his ass kicked against Diminauer in the second round. You saw Comasagna, who beat Blanchette. Very easy win for him. Brooksby beat Trotter in straight sets. Good win for Brooksby. You saw Yibing once again get hurt. You hate to see it, but not a surprise. And you ended up seeing him lose the first set. Then he quit. O'Connell beat DeZumer in straight sets. Saw Opelka lose to Bonzi in straight sets. Nice showing by Bonzi there. You saw Quinn lose to Maichik. Nice win by him. De Jong survived a marathon against Zhu as he won a final set breaker. Kazas survived a marathon against Martinez, winning in 3. You saw Royer beat Navone in 3 sets. Tabilo ended up beating Giron in straight sets. Saw Howells beat McDonald in straight sets. Shang was healthy and actually won. Beat Kovacevic in 3. Rinderknich was down a set to Medjedovic. Medjedovic complained about the lack of circulation in the building, and he quit. And the conditions seemed to be pretty rough over there in Shanghai. He couldn't handle it, and Rinderknich did win in a retirement. Arnaldi beat Sakamoto in straight sets, and Boo won a nice marathon against Cerundolo, the bad one, JM Cerundolo, in 3 sets. So once again, a pretty decent balance between 3-setters and straightforward straight set wins. But the main takeaways here, the biggest loser for me, look, I know that you've had a couple upsets, and Korda losing to Bergs is pretty funny. The biggest loser for me has got to be Berrettini. You won 9 return points against Manarino. That is just disgusting. So Manarino, nice win for him. He played very well, but 9 return points, I got to roast you for that. I know Berrettini is not a great returner in general. The backhand's non-existent. But damn, man, like 9 return points against Manarino is disgusting. That's my biggest loser of the first round, if I had to go there. Biggest winner, I kind of want to go Baez in a way. I'll probably go Nishioka, honestly. Even though we did pick against him, the fact is he won a match in Shanghai, and he had been terrible for about 3 months straight. So nice job by him getting the job done. Willie mentioning the humidity has been giving people problems. Definitely true, and that can be a factor we got to keep in mind moving forward. But either way, a couple of players couldn't handle the heat. They self-destructed, and a couple of players rose under the heat, and we'll see if that could happen again here in the second round. Anyway, thinking of other things to talk about, for the, I'd say, tennis landscape, I really don't have much. That was the first round recap, not too much drama, couple retirements here or there. Besides that, nothing else to really talk about. You saw Swiatek lose in a bagel against Navarro yesterday, kind of shocking, in the third set. 6-0, didn't see that coming, but nice win for Navarro. Basically it, time to move on into the second round for Shanghai. Before we get into the second round, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookie.ag. Use bet on football, baseball playoffs. They were prop builder second to none. Their model simple. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime. Use crypto for deposits and payouts. You can sign up for your new account. Use code SGPN for a special 100% bet back bonus $500 for new customers. MyBookie.ag promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig, which is America's #1 sports register market in once again, the United States. So if you want to capitalize on great lines, check out Novig. It's an exchange. Get some great prices, better than sports books. It's available 35 plus states. Download the Novig app, and we have a nice deal for you. When you download the app, get $50 and you spend just $5 if you use the promo code SGPN. Got an actual Novig, promo code SGPN. Make sure to use our promo code SGPN to capitalize on the new customer offer. Spend $5, get $50 in bonus money. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the first round recap. Time to move on into the second round. So, starting off with the second round, we're going to jump around a lot, though, because there are a ton of matches to go through. So, for the first match, we're talking about Shelton taking on Goffin. For this one, Shelton minus 275, Goffin's plus 215. The spread is at 3.5. Juice, though, to Goffin, plus 3.5, minus 137. The over-under is at 22.5 games. Now, Shelton, we know, when healthy, should be able to beat Goffin. However, that didn't happen when they faced off in Acapulco earlier this year. Goffin beat Shelton in straight sets, and Shelton has not played since he lost to Mannarino with the shoulder injury in the U.S. Open. So is he healthy? We don't know. Goffin, though, was able to beat Mueller in 3 sets. He's been decent lately, ended up beating Zhu in Beijing, beat Rinderknech in Beijing, ended up losing to Rinderknech again, though, in the rematch in the actual draw after he beat him in qualifying, and then he beat Mueller in the first round here. So I understand why there's a bit of juice on Goffin's, I'd say, spread here, because we don't know what Shelton we're going to get, and Goffin did look very good in the last 2 sets against Mueller, winning 6-1, 6-1 in the final 2 sets. You know what? I'm going to go with Goffin plus the games here. I think that Shelton could dominate. We still know, though, that he's not a great returner. He has not played since the U.S. Open. I question how healthy he's going to be. Will the serve be fully dialed in? I doubt it. So I'll go Goffin plus the games here. Shelton, once again, if he's in good form, should win. But in reality, I don't trust his actual spot here. Not playing for about a month or 2. And Goffin's been playing better recently. I'll go Goffin plus the games. Think there might be some value on the dog for this one. Moving on to the next matchup. Going to look at the match between Bonzi and Diallo. For this one, Diallo is about minus 190. Bonzi is about plus 150 for the spread. Minus 2.5 for Diallo, plus 2.5 for Bonzi. The over-under is at 22.5. Now, Bonzi had a nice win against Opelka in the first round in straight sets. Diallo didn't play in the first set. He had a bye. Recently, not very good. Did lose to Fritz in 3 in Tokyo. Aged well because Fritz made the final, of course. Davis Cup beat Israel in 1 match. Israel beat a guy who's really not that known in Kukerman, who nobody's really ever heard of, so not really a big win there. U.S. Open, not a great showing. Beat De Zoomer and then lost to Munar in straight sets. So overall, not really a great showing recently by Diallo. Bonzi's been up and down all year, but he's been up and down again, and he was able to beat Opelka in the first round. So I do think facing Opelka, and he did a good job on the return games, actually. He was able to break a couple times. He had a bunch of break points. I like how he returned. I think Bonzi can actually get the job done in this one. Diallo's not been very good, and I do think that Diallo's unforced error issue can open the door for Bonzi. Do I like him at minus 190? No. Should he be favored? Yes. I think that he should be around minus 150, minus 160. 190, though, feels high to me. Give me Bonzi for the value. Don't mind the plus 150 price as the dog. Moving on to the next match. Going to look at the match between Mannarino and Cerundolo. This one's basically a pick'em on the actual board. You're looking at Cerundolo being minus 105. I see even money, though, in some spots. See Mannarino at around minus 120. For the over-under, I see 22.5 games. So a question about this match earlier in the comment section. I see Enigma mentioning Cerundolo being a dog to Mannarino. Now, for the head-to-head, mentioning that they've never faced off against each other before. Mannarino, though, has been good lately. We saw him have a respectable showing in Beijing, made it to qualifying, beat Bublik, and then lost to Musetti. And Musetti, we know, has been in good form for the last couple of weeks, especially on hard court. But you're looking at Cerundolo, and it's mostly been bad. So to go through the form, he ended up beating Dzanchop in the Davis Cup, ended up beating Rune in straight sets in the Laver Cup, lost to Alcaraz, lost to Tien in Beijing. Now he's here in Shanghai. So not really playing that well recently. Now Mannarino, you could argue with the courts here, with him serving so well against Berrettini, is he either a very good matchup with these courts, and that's why he's favored, because we think that his flat ground strokes can actually translate to success here, or is Berrettini just a god-awful returner, and Mannarino got the job done? So you could argue it's going to go either way. I think I would pick Mannarino. You could argue that there is some value in Cerundolo because of the upside. But recently, with his unforced error concerns in any given match, I think it's a bad matchup for Mannarino. I mean, for him against Mannarino. I think Mannarino is going to keep the ball in play. We know that his ground stroke's very flat. Cerundolo can have questionable shot selection, not exactly a consistent server. And I do think Mannarino, if anything else, he's consistent. And I do think that his consistency will help extract errors from Cerundolo, whose shot selection can be very problematic. I kind of agree with the line. I think Mannarino on hard court is comfortable. I think Cerundolo is better on clay, for example. But I do think Cerundolo, if the firepower is dialed in, and if he's able to unload on the forehand, I think he'll win. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I think he's going to hit errors. I think Manarino will be able to play well, and I do think his overall unique play style will really frustrate Cerundolo. So give me the favorite here in Manarino in this one at around -120. Moving on to TN taking on Kecmanovic, another match that was brought up in the comment section. I saw somebody mentioning earlier why TN was a dog against Kecmanovic. So for this one, we know that you're looking at potential fatigue being a factor. TN did lose in the final in Beijing to Sinner, and he had a couple of marathons before that, but luckily for him, Medvedev retired, so he didn't have to play a full 3 sets, and then he lost to Sinner in about an hour and 13. So he was not on the court for that long against Sinner, but he made the final of an ATP event, so he's been in good form. Kecmanovic really not been in good form recently. We ended up seeing him lose in Beijing to Mensik, won a Davis Cup match against Turkey. Besides that, lost to Fonseca in the U.S. Open, lost Winston-Salem to Korda. Overall, really not playing great tennis. However, he did end up beating TN 3 years ago in the U.S. Open. Do I care? No, because TN right now, as a reminder, is still very young. So the fact is he was able to beat a teenager in 4 sets 3 years ago. That means nothing to me. Now, I think if I'd say the word I'll use is fatigue. If fatigue was not a factor for TN in this matchup, potentially, he'd be favored. I think by a decent amount. I think it'd be -140, -150. However, they're pricing it in as a spot where TN's going to be completely out of gas, and you're going to end up seeing Kecmanovic capitalize on the spot. Do I trust him in the spot? No, because I don't think he's very good. I know he ended up winning a title in Delray months ago, which we actually won with him. We took him to win it. But the point is, I think TN's the better player. You know that he's going to keep the ball in play. He has a lot of, I'd say, consistency with his ground strokes. Kecmanovic, really not the case. He's very volatile, a lot of mistakes. I think he'll shoot himself in the foot. I think I would take TN, but the only reason why he's a dog here is because of fatigue. I think that you're looking at TN, who's playing his 5th match in 6 days, Willie brings up, and they're thinking, well, he's going to be exhausted. He's also traveling from Beijing to Shanghai. That's not going to bode well for him. For value, though, I cannot take Kecmanovic. I think that the price does feel understandable, but I don't want to lay it with him. Maybe a live bet if TN wins the first set. But for value alone, I think it's on TN. Would I bet it? Probably not. But it's only because of fatigue. If you're assuming full health for both guys, TN would be favored. But I can't trust Kecmanovic at all. I can't take him. So for me, it's a pass. If you want to go TN, I'm rooting for you. Maybe first set TN, and you hope fatigue sets in later in the match. But I'm going to pass on that one entirely. That was almost my dog if I wanted to go for TN, but the spot and the line feel a little bit too sketchy to me, so I passed. Not going to bother for that one. Moving on to the next matchup. You have Humbert taking on Thompson. We know Humbert's been really bad lately, which is kind of a shame because he was very good earlier in the year. Humbert's -150, Thompson's +120. For the spread, -1.5 for Thompson and for Humbert. Humbert, though, has some juice, though, 1.5, -122. For the over-under, I see 22.5. Now, for the head-to-head history between the two of them, quickly pulling it up now. So Thompson and Humbert faced off a couple of times last year, ended up splitting. Thompson beat him in 3 in Cincinnati, and then you saw Humbert get revenge in Paris as he won in straight sets. Now, Humbert, we know, has been really bad recently. Lost to Brooksby in the first round in Tokyo, lost in the first round of the U.S. Open to Walton. And we know that Thompson has been battling some injuries, but he was able to beat Holmgren in the first round of this event. So the point is, do you think it's a good spot for Thompson as a dog to potentially have value at +120? I'd say maybe, but I did a deep dive, and Thompson really not good against lefties. I looked at the last couple of matches, and the lefties have been his kryptonite recently. So with that being the case, I actually don't mind Humbert in the spot. Would I bet this? No, because he's been in bad form. But you're looking at the recent results. Thompson did lose to Bilo in Chengdu in straight sets, who we know is a lefty. It has not really gone well for him against lefties recently, so maybe that's just a matchup thing, forehand versus backhand cross-court stuff. But I do think that Humbert is going to win. Would I bet it? No, at 150. But I do have to acknowledge that Thompson's numbers against lefties have been really underwhelming. So I'm going to pass on him there. Think Humbert wins, but maybe an over is worth a look. I'll pass, though, but I'm not going to dive into the potential trap of Thompson plus 120. Not really interested. So going to jump around a bit, moving to the Bublik match against a qualifier as he takes on Vacherat. For this one, Bublik's minus 400. You have Vacherat at plus 295. For the spread, you have minus 3.5 for Bublik, plus 3.5 for Vacherat. The over-under is at 22.5. Now, you're looking at Bublik, who won a title. Then he got killed at Manarino in his first match in the following event, which you could argue is just a bad spot. He won in Hangzhou, ended up showing up, wasn't fully invested. Maybe fatigue played a factor after having 2 breakers against Royer in the final, and then he lost in straight sets handily. Now, for Vacherat, he's been good so far in the event. Beat De Gier in straight sets, beat Draxel in 3, and ended up beating Basavareti in 3. Underrated serve and firepower. So Bublik on paper should win. However, do I think that Vacherat can serve well enough to keep it interesting? I actually do. I think Bublik's going to win, but I do think that you're looking at what could be a breaker in there. Vacherat at 20-plus aces against Basavareti in qualifying. I don't mind going for Bublik. His team total, for example, is at minus 165 on the over 12.5. I don't mind the over for this one. Maybe if you want to go for a tiebreak at even money, I don't mind getting cute, going for a prop play. Vacherat, though, has been, I'd say, solid through qualifying for the actual firepower that he has. I think Willie wins. If you want to go, I think Willie is right, though. I think Bublik does end up winning. But I do think that you could argue a breaker might be in the cards, maybe one close set. But I think Bublik does eventually win. Maybe straight sets minus 130. I'm on the tiebreak, though, at even money. I think it's a pretty good price. We're looking at what could be a pretty solid serving display early on. Bublik maybe wears him down as the match goes along. But I think a breaker is interesting at even money as a potential, I'd say, cute plus money play, or even money play shopping around if you want to try to go for a prop play in that one. Don't mind the breaker for that matchup. Moving on to Munar taking on Kaboli. For this one, pretty close on the books. Kaboli is a slight favorite, minus 125, give or take. You're looking at Munar being around even money, give or take. For the over-under in this one, you're looking at around 22.5, juice to the over minus 120, spread minus 1.5 for Kaboli, plus 1.5 for Munar. So never faced off in the head-to-head. I find the line fascinating because Kaboli's ranked, Munar's not, and yet the line's very close. Now, Kaboli did lose to Tien in Beijing. No shame in that. Tien made the final. He played horribly, but Tien did have a great tournament. He ended up beating Rublev in the first round of that event, though. And then we saw him lose to Fonseca in the Laver Cup, lost to Musetti in retirement in the U.S. Open after beating Pizarro and beating Brooksby. So overall, Kaboli's been volatile. He's been up and down, which is pretty standard for Kaboli. Munar, though, has been okay. Beat Fuchsovics in 3, lost to Berrettini in Tokyo, which kind of aged horribly because Berrettini has not been good since coming back from injury. Ended up losing to Muller on clay in the Davis Cup. So not really in great form recently for Munar. Both guys have been pretty up and down. So my thoughts for this one, I don't mind the over 2.5 sets. I think it's going to be a very close matchup. Munar is a bit of a choker in 3 setters, but for the most part, consistent. Guy that keeps the ball in play, does not really try to do much, and Kaboli is the opposite, who's going to go through what I think is going to be multiple waves of this match. Kaboli is going to have one great set, one random service game punt job, and it might go back and forth. I don't mind the over 2.5 sets. I think it will be a close match. I think that the odds feel a bit right to me. I think Kaboli should be maybe a slightly bigger favorite at about minus 135 or so. Munar might be live maybe in this one, but the over 2.5 at plus 130 kind of caught my eye. I think that's going to be a pretty close matchup stylistically. I think both players can have success. Give me the over 2.5 sets. And what I think is a close matchup on paper, I think it plays out that way. Give me the over 2.5 sets for this one. Moving on to the next day, actually, kind of had enough of the matchups here on Friday. Moving on to Saturday. So for the matchups here, good match to start the card. You have Fekina taking on Arnaldi. Fekina's minus 250, give or take. Arnaldi's plus 190. The spread's minus 3.5. The over-under is at 22.5. Juice, though, towards the under. So they faced off this year a couple of times, and they alternated great performances. You saw Arnaldi, who beat Fekina in Dallas in straight sets, face off in Delray about a week later, and Fekina didn't end up beating Arnaldi in straight sets, in order to losing in the final in the event. Fekina, though, had a bye in the first round, lost to Medvedev in Beijing, did beat Carabelli in straight sets, but he's been mostly up and down. For Arnaldi, beat Sakamoto in straight sets, not easy, but still a win. Lost to Vukovic in 3, beat Nardi in 3, Sorry, lost to Fuxovics in straight sets. Hangzhou lost to Kaza in 3. U.S. Open lost to Sarundalo in 5. Winston-Salem lost to Dzanchop in straight sets. Cincinnati lost to Bonzi in 5. In 3. He's really just not been good lately. So I do think you're looking at a spot where I think Fokina does win. Do I think 250 is a fair price? No. I think Fokina is also a head case, and I think that Arnaldi, playstyle-wise, could be frustrating for him to deal with. So for the actual match here, I didn't mind the team total over for Fokina at 12.5 minus 120, give or take. I think you might end up seeing one close set. Maybe it goes 3. I think Fokina ends up winning, but we know that he's also vulnerable to getting broken in big spots. I think it ends up being close, but I think that Fokina does end up winning. For my favorite play in the match, though, give me Fokina team total over 12.5 at minus 124, give or take. I think there's some value on that play, but I think should be a pretty competitive straight set win for the favorite. Moving on to the next matchup, looking at Zverev against Royer for this one. Zverev's about minus 500, give or take. Royer's around plus 350. And for the actual over-under for this matchup, I see 21.5. Now, Zverev has been up and down recently, saw him lose to Medvedev in Beijing in straight sets. Now, he was able to beat Mutet in 3, ended up beating Sonego in straight sets, but overall really not playing great tennis. Royer made the final in Hangzhou, lost to Bublik 7-6, 7-6. Went to qualifying here, did not drop a set against Droget or against Billy Harris, then beat Navone in 3. So for my thoughts on this one, give me the over in this one. You could argue that Zverev might kill him. Maybe, but I don't trust him at all. So with me lacking trust on Zverev, I think that Royer's proven he's a good enough server and he's a good enough hardcore player to make Zverev work for it. I don't want a breaker in this matchup, and I think that Royer can keep it interesting. Give me the over in this one. I was hoping for games at 4.5 being a decent price, which you can argue if you shop around, you might be able to find. So I don't mind Royer maybe plus 4.5 games or the over 21.5. I think you'll see a close matchup. I'm going to pick Zverev to win, but Royer's proven he's good on hard court. So I think it's going to be close. I'll give me Zverev in a close matchup there, but I do think he gets the job done nonetheless. Moving on to the next matchup. Going to look at the matchup between, where do I want to go for this one? For this one, we'll go with Shapo taking on O'Connell for this one. So Shapovalov, decent favorite for this matchup. Shapo is around about minus 265. I see O'Connell at plus 200 for the spread, minus 3.5 for Shapo, plus 3.5 for O'Connell. The over-under is at 22.5. So we have a battle of one-handed backhands happening. And for the head-to-head, face off one time in Belgrade. Last year in hardcourt, Shapo did win in straight sets, 6-2, 6-2. Now, O'Connell, we know, has been injured a lot recently, but when healthy, he's not bad. Beat the Zoomer in straight sets, lost to Dzanchop in Beijing, ended up making it into qualifying, lost to Tabilo in Chengdu in the actual draw. Not a bad showing there, made the quarters, but either way, point is O'Connell did fall short of the eventual champion in 3. No shame in that. Ended up making a deep run in a challenger in China as well, lost to Tabilo via retirement. So if he's healthy, I think he's alive. Shapo, though, has played one match since the U.S. Open, lost to Altmaier in straight sets. Give me the dog in this one. I think Shapo laying 260 and change is kind of insane. And when healthy, O'Connell's proven that he can be dangerous on hard court. We know that he has a one-handed backhand. He can showcase the firepower. Shapo's better on hard court, but I know that he can blow a match to anybody because of the volatility with his play style. So I'm going to go with the dog here. I think Shapo's too big of a price. I'll go with the dog for value. Give me O'Connell at plus 200 as my dog for this matchup. Moving on to the next match, we're looking at Felix taking on Tabilo, which could be one of the more underrated matchups in the entire round. For this one, you're looking at a decent favorite of Felix being minus 180. Tabilo is plus 145. For the spread, minus 2.5 for Felix, plus 2.5 for Tabilo. The over-under in games is at 23.5. Now, Tabilo won the title and Chengdu a couple weeks ago, went to qualifying here and ended up with, not dropping a set, beating Kui and ended up beating Mayotte. Then he beat Giron in straight sets in the main draw. Felix, though, has not played since his very impressive run in the U.S. Open. Lost to Sinner in the semis, has not played since. So look at the head-to-head. Never faced off against each other before. So nothing to use for the head-to-head. But I think Tabilo's alive. I'll put it that way. The fact is Felix was in great form. Do I trust that to be him for the remainder of the year? No. That was the best he's played in years. So I'm not going to suddenly assume this is the new Felix. Maybe he had a nice dream run, and he'll come crashing back down to earth here in Asia on Saturday. I'll go with Tabilo for value. I think 140 for a champion on the ATP Tour about a week or two ago, a guy who's good on hard court and a guy who will force Felix to keep the ball in play because he does. And we know that Felix's unforced error issues can be a problem for him. Give me Tabilo for the plus money. I'll dare Felix to look sharp in his first match in basically a month. Moving on to the last couple of matches, I'll do one more. Looking at the matchup between Borges and Tsitsipas. For this one, you're looking at Tsitsipas being favored for this one. He's minus 155. Borges is plus 125. For the spread, minus 1.5 for Tsitsipas, plus 1.5 for Borges. The over-under is at 22.5. So head-to-head, faced off a couple of times on clay. One was this year, actually. One was in Rome in 2023, and Tsitsipas won both in straight sets. Now, it was on clay. We know that Borges he won a title in the ATP level on clay a couple years ago. Is he a great clay player? Not really, but Tsitsipas beat him 6-1, 6-1. So not even a sweat, but Monte Carlo is easily his favorite tournament. So a bit of bias there in terms of, I'd say, factoring in the results, because we know Tsitsipas is amazing on Monte Carlo soil, and Borges had never stood a chance. But Borges was able to look decently over the last couple of matches, beat Zanschulp in straight sets, lost to Fritz in a competitive straight sets, ended up beating Watanuki in Tokyo, ended up once again showcasing some decent skills in the U.S. Open, losing to Paul in 5. As for Tsitsipas, we know that he has been really bad recently, ended up losing to Fonseca in the Davis Cup, ended up beating Seabold Wild, though, in the Davis Cup in the U.S. Open, beat Moore, ended up losing to Altmaier in 5. Winston-Salem lost to Boo in straight sets, lost to Bonzi in 3 in Cincinnati. He's been a mess, simply put. Give me Borges in this one. Simply put, I can't take Tsitsipas laying a price when Borges has looked pretty decent on hard court. Decent might get the job done in this one. We know the volatility's there with Tsitsipas with the one-handed backhand. And the fact is, you're looking at Borges who, worst-case scenario, can keep the ball in play. So I don't mind the plus money with Borges fading Tsitsipas. It's really a matter of not knowing what we're going to get from him. And with him laying 155, not interested. Give me Borges at plus 125 as my dog play for this matchup. It's going to wrap it up, though, for the preview of the second round in Shanghai. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, I'm brought to you by our sponsor, Arctic Fantasy. Use them for pick'em entries with the 5 times your entry. Pick higher or lower on player stats. You could do football, you could do tennis, you could do baseball, a bunch of different sports for you. New offer, though, for Underdog for new customers. Play just $5, get $100 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by our other sponsor, Rhythm. They're off to a great start in college football and NFL. They have a leaderboard with cash prizes every week for tracking your bets in the app. Track 5 bets at the same type of model that you build, and you can win $1K. And a reminder, we have a nice discount code if you do sign up for Rhythm for a new account. Use code SGPN25 when you download the Rhythm app for a quarter off first month. Down the Rhythm app once again. Promo code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the second round in Shanghai. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, it's going to be a bit of a juicy play, but I do like the matchup nonetheless. I'm going to go to Rune to win in straight sets against Baez at minus 150. That is on DraftKings. Now, Baez did end up beating Zhang in the first round. Zhang was off injury, has not been good recently. Either way, the point is Baez was able to survive. Did not look that great. He left the door open a couple of times, and he was able to escape. But we know Baez has lost 15 of his last 18 hardcourt matches, 3-15 straight up in the last 18. Rune has been fine on hard court. Not amazing for a fringe top 10 guy, but he's 8-5 in his last 13 hardcourt matches. One common theme, though, he did not drop a set in any of those 8 wins. When he wins comfortably. When he loses, it's usually painful, and he chokes, or he has a mental breakdown on court. The point is, though, against Baez, who's a clay specialist, I do think that Rune is a bad matchup for him, and I think that Rune should win in straight sets. They faced off on hard court one time a couple of years ago, and Rune did win in straight sets in Basel 2 years ago. The history is mostly clay between them. We know Baez is a clay specialist, but Baez was able to escape against Zhang. Didn't really look great in the process. Rune, though, we know, is a good hardcore player, and the fact is, I said before, The last 8 hardcore wins that he has not dropped a set in any of them. So give me Rune in straight sets minus 150 as my lock for the show. For the dog, I'm going to go to the Hanfman match against Tiafoe. Give me Hanfman money line at plus 140. He's been in good form lately. He's won 6 of his last 7, went through qualifying, beat Sonego in 3 in the first round. Playing good tennis. Tiafoe, not so much. He was awful in the Davis Cup. He was bad before that. He's lost 4 straight. So Tiafoe's going through it again, and I do think he's a big favorite, and I don't trust him at this current price. Tiafoe's also never been good here in Shanghai. I know typically he raises level in these 1,000 events, in these Grand Slams. Shanghai, not so much. He's never made the round of 16 in Shanghai in his entire career. 4-5 career record in Shanghai. So we know Tiafoe was able to put together a decent showing a couple months ago in general. But Tiafoe is always a guy who I think is one of the more overrated players on tour. Yes, he ended up making the U.S. Open semis a couple of times, but it's really just a battle between him and himself. And the fact is, he lost in 3 sets to Fucsovics in Tokyo, lost to Mensik and Lehechka in straight sets in the Davis Cup, lost to Struff in the U.S. Open in straight sets. Just the guy I don't trust. Hanfman's played 3 matches here, and Tiafoe's not played any. I think it's a good spot for Hanfman. Good price at plus 140. Tiafoe's really been in shambles. So I do think you're looking at a spot where I'm going to fade him for this price. I'll go for Hanfman plus 140 as my dog. So once again, the lock and dog. The lock's going to be on Rune, straight sets at minus 150. For the dog, I'm going to go with Hanfman money line at plus 140 against Tiafoe. So to wrap it up for the show, back once again for the 3rd round of Shanghai. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.